Well, good evening and welcome to the Salem Area Mass Transit District's Board of Directors meeting for May 26, 2015. Tonight we'll start with public comments and we'll go from there. People wishing to speak on any topic will have a 3-minute limit. We'll then approve the consent calendar, which contains the minutes from an April board meeting and 2 routine items, which is approving the police contract and intergovernmental agreement with the county for telephone service. We have 3 action items tonight. We're going to review the community outreach results for phase 2 of the Moving Forward project. Second item is accepting a comprehensive Title VI equity analysis for fares and service plan. And the third item is selecting a board member to review the general manager's evaluations. We'll then have information items followed by a number of reports. So with that, I'll call the meeting to order. And please note the attendance. And our Pledge of Allegiance tonight will be, who wants to do it? Steve's not here. Okay, John's going to do it.
All right, flag right over there. Please join me as I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated.
Thank you, John. Okay, announcements or changes to the agenda? Don't see any. Okay. Our first item tonight is the consent calendar. Oh, public comment first, I'm sorry. Public comment, we have 3 people that have signed up. Paul Evans would come forward to the microphone. Paul is the representative for a district, or what do you call it? House District 20, yeah, from Monmouth.
I just wanted to comment and first of all say thank you for all the hard work that you do. Volunteer boards like this are never easy, and I've seen most of your faces many times in the legislature recently trying to help your constituents. I really just wanted to stop in. I'm going to listen to some of the reports tonight, but I wanted to encourage you down the path that I believe you're headed for Saturday and Sunday service. On behalf of House District 20, one of the things we identified both in the campaign and then through every single meeting with constituent sense is the challenges that certain aspects, especially with socioeconomic challenges, people have in getting to and from work, getting to and from around the community. And as we put our economy back together and as we try to figure out how we can master the 21st century economy as it is evolving, transportation intra-community and inter-community I think is going to be critical. So whichever path you choose in terms of means, just know that I'll do everything I can to help you on the other side. And at the end of the day, this community I think is going to be well served by having Saturday, Sunday service back and all the other things that you're working on. So thank you again for the opportunity to come.
Thank you, Representative. Okay, the second person is Casey.
Okupi.
Okay, that's the one.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to reiterate what was just stated, pretty much. And in addition to that, I'm doing an event in August 15th and 16th, and that's on a Saturday and a Sunday. So it's imperative. There are events happening all the time, and there's clearly not public transportation that's helping with those events on the weekends. And I have websites and things. I'm doing the Northwest Comic Fest. It's going to be a giant comic book convention that's happening at the Salem Convention Center. And I want to have thousands of people go to this event. That's the goal. And I wanted to help show the importance by potentially even, if there was some way that we'd be able to show that it's important to run by being able to run on that weekend, for example, and then possibly videotaping people's comments as to their perspectives and their thoughts so that there's this tangible product that, or just something that shows everyone that everyone's advocating for this, that people appreciate it. You know, if we had someone on a bus on a weekend prior to having that regular weekend schedule going, maybe just a limited weekend, like one where there's a big event like my event. I mean, it makes sense to me. But we could have someone on the bus with like videotapes interviewing people saying, hey, what do you think about this? We're running on the weekend. How do you like that? Make a video and then just share that, because it's very important. And when we see people actually utilizing it with a big smile on their face and everything, I mean, that becomes clear to everyone. People want to be able to get back and forth. I mean, I don't know where I am with that 3 minutes, but
You're about there.
that's about it, you know?
Thank you, Casey, and
Thanks.
I know I visited your studio, and there's a lot of interesting things in that place.
Yes,
So-
absolutely, thank you.
Thank you for coming. Did you want to say
I
something?
was just going to say thank you, Casey. He shares an office on the same floor I do. I'm glad he's putting on the event. It's a great event. And I wish we could afford to pay for that, but maybe in the future there will be weekend service for you.
Hopefully, there will be. Next speaker is Daryl Patterson.
How y'all doing tonight? I came here in February to talk about D Street, and I'd like to reiterate, kind of go over what I said before, only I have more information now to give you more ammunition. First of all, I'd like to ask if any of you have ever ridden the D Street bus. How often? When?
It was prior to 2009 when service contracted. I can't get to it anymore.
Okay. Have many of you ridden it to see why it should be taken away? Hands? If you haven't ridden it and you don't know who's riding it and what purpose it's serving, how can you take it away? I implore you to get on it at 7 a.m. in the morning. What are those school kids going to do? That bus is standing room only. You expect them to walk 6/10 of a mile up to Center Street, ride down to Capitol, and walk 6/10 of a mile back. To me, that's unacceptable. Now, I have a disability. You know about that. I told you before. I don't mind. I can walk. I walk 6 to 8 miles a day. I'm in shape. But I see people getting on that bus with walkers, with canes that are in worse shape than I am, trying to get home with groceries. You expect them to walk 6/10 of a mile? And don't use red line or cherry lift as an excuse, because that doesn't work. It's more expensive. You have to make 24 hours advance notice. And that really limits your life. And you're not a for-profit company. I know you have to maximize your dollars, but you're a service company. You're here to service the community. So service the community. You're taking away a vital link going down D Street. In regards to your Route 9, I used to live off Wheatland, and putting 2 buses in a counterclockwise loop out there is ridiculous. Nobody rides 9 now. Every time I got on it, there was nobody on it. Maybe 3 or 4 people. And if your excuse is more people ride because you got 2 buses going opposite directions, it's only a 5-minute loop around there. Anybody can wait 5 minutes. I don't think you're going to attract anybody else doing that. Same with your extended route you're thinking of bringing up. I ride Lancaster a lot, and at 9 o'clock, there's nobody on that bus. Extending it 2 more hours can extract how many people? There certainly won't be more than ride D Street now. So I think you're wasting dollars putting them in the wrong spot. I do applaud your weekend service, though. I don't drive because of my disability, and I really need the bus. And living on D Street, it's very important that you keep it there. And I would challenge each and every one of you to come over to my house and walk to the next bus stop. I'll bet you wouldn't want to do it. It's 5 minutes up to Lancaster. There's no shelter. Have to take a transfer to Center Street. Or if I walk over to Center Street, it's an 8-minute walk through the mall if they're open. If it's raining like heck, I don't want to be out there. There's no shelter at McGrath's. There's another 5-minute walk down by Hawthorne, or 4 minutes up toward Lancaster. But who wants to do that in the rain? So I implore you to think about getting rid of this route. Because as it is, I don't think you're moving forward, I think you're moving backward. Just think about the people on D Street. They need you. Thank you,
Well,
that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson.
Mr. Patterson, I'd like to thank you for coming down this evening and speaking. I'd like to thank you for coming down here this evening and speaking. I know that we had a past person that came down and she was very upset and talked about how she'd have to walk through the rain to get to the next stop. And I do remember those people, and I want to say that the thing about the bus service is many people pay for it. Not everyone can access it as conveniently as we would like to. So I apologize to all the people that are going to lose out. I have said in the past that I really feel our staff did the best they could to come up with the numbers to provide the best service with the dollars that we've been given to serve the most individuals who use the bus. So I apologize for all the people that are going to lose out. And personally, I don't think anybody on this board takes it lightly when we hear the stories how people are personally impacted to lose their service. And everyone on this board I think has that mindset that it's a very valuable resource, and if we could get more of that resource, I believe everybody on the board would work towards that goal. So I just want to say thank you for coming down here, and I did hear everything you said.
Could you cut it back to 1 hour?
I think those decisions have been made, but you can talk to staff about the comments that went into those decisions.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that didn't sign up that would like to speak? Okay, thank you. Now we'll go to the consent calendar.
I'll move the consent calendar.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the consent calendar indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Approve, same, opposed, same sign. Okay, it's passed. Okay, action items. The first one is our review of the community outreach results of Phase 2 Moving Forward project. Alan Pollack will do it.
Great. Thank you, President Thompson, members of the board. The issue before you is whether or not to accept the outreach results from Moving Forward Phase 2. Back in June of 2014, you accepted the comprehensive system analysis that was developed by Jarrett Walker and Associates. At that time, you directed me to develop implementation and recommendations pertaining to the service changes outlined in that analysis. In July of 2014, you reviewed the draft plans for the Moving Forward project, which is designed to closely align Chariot service with the recommendations from that analysis, as well as increase operational efficiencies. The Moving Forward plan consists of Phase 1 and Phase 2. Phase 1 reallocates existing weekday service based on current funding and focuses on the establishment of a core network while increasing frequency of busy routes, creating a consistent all-day schedule, and establishing more cross-town routes. Phase 1 will be implemented on September 8th. Phase 2 builds on Phase 1 by adding evening, weekend, and holiday service. Evening service would include service past 9 p.m. with the last pullout from the Downtown Transit Center occurring at 11 p.m. Weekend service would include Saturdays and Sundays, as well as service on several holidays, all holidays except for New Year's, Thanksgiving, and Christmas Day. Phase 2 would also allow for the incorporation of a downtown circulator and the reinstatement of the student bus pass program for middle and high school students. In order to implement Phase 2, additional funding is required. The financial resources required to implement Phase 2 is estimated to be $5 million per year. There are two primary funding sources available to the district: a 5-year property tax operating levy or a payroll tax. The district commissioned Echo Northwest to evaluate each source to determine the respective rates needed to raise $5 million per year. The results show that the property tax levy would be required to be at 58 cents per $1,000 of assessed value, and the payroll tax would be 0.2% of annual payroll. Regardless of the source, it would be a supplemental revenue source to the district's existing 76 cents per $1,000 of assessed value of property tax, which is the district's permanent tax rate. Either option will require a vote of the electorate of the residents living within the Salem-Keizer urban growth boundary. The board will need to decide which revenue source to be selected in order to implement Phase 2. At our February 26th meeting, you directed me to seek out additional community input and report back at this meeting on the findings. You have in your packet a summary of the outreach efforts that I'd like to go through. We began on January 8th, where we met with the Salem Chamber of Commerce Public Policy Session. And attachment A provides the response from that meeting from the Chamber. On January 26th and 27th, we held a community stakeholders meeting. And if you look at attachment B for the summary, I'd like to review them quickly. I'm just going to do a quick summary of it. So if you see on the question, we had 17 people in attendance on both days. We asked them if they believe the Phase 2 service plan will serve the community's needs. You can see from a 17-0 vote, it was unanimous that they agreed that it did meet the service community needs. However, differences of opinion did come when it came time to select how to pay for it. Interesting, you see when we asked when people preferred a property tax option, it was 6 yes, 4 no, 2 undecided, and payroll tax option, 6 yes, 4 no, 2 undecided. And when we asked for both, it was 4 yes, 0 no, 1 undecided. And then there's a list of responses and questions, which is in your packet as attachment B, that were asked and answered at that meeting. On February 12th, I presented to the Marion County's Children and Families Commission. On February 25th, I presented along with several board members at the Demo Forum. On March 14th, Director Krebs and I presented to the Salem City Watch Group. We also held a series of community forums. We had 5 of them. They are listed in your packet. The goal of that was to provide information and promote the completion of the online survey. And then there was also various neighborhood association meetings where board members presented the plan at that time. We also conducted 2 surveys. The first survey was a telephone survey about transportation issues among people in the Salem-Keizer service area, which is attachment C. So the objectives of that telephone survey was to determine support for the proposed funding measures, assess the impact of the information about the benefits provided if a funding measure was approved, and then identify differences in opinions by different demographic characteristics. And we had previously went through this, so I'm going to just highlight a couple things. So we surveyed 300 most likely voters via landline and cell phone. We conducted that survey in February. We did appropriate testing to avoid bias, and the results were high awareness of both chariots and chariot lift service. So you can see 96% aware of chariots, 85% aware of chariot lift. 68% favorable opinion about chariots. And when we asked about support of a property tax levy, there was a 58% support of that option, 29% opposed, and 13% undecided. I'm not going to go through this, but it listed all of the reasons why they favored the levy, highlighted by good for the community and available service on weekends. And they didn't favor it. And most of when people didn't favor it was based on anti-tax sentiments. And 67% support for the employer-paid payroll tax. And they favored it because it helps people and increased services were the most frequently responded answers. And why they didn't favor the payroll tax had to do with anti-tax sentiments as opposed to options. Top 4 reasons why favored a tax increase: it provided transportation for seniors to medical service added weekend and holidays, added evening service, and provided free rides for middle and high school students. When we took a look and actually explained what would happen and gave a real-world example, the initial support for property tax, and actually both taxes, reduced somewhat. So property tax, when we gave a concrete example of what would happen, using a $200,000 of assessed value, initial support was at 58%, and it was reduced to 49% based on that information. And then when we asked the payroll tax and talked about it costing $20 in payroll taxes for every $10,000 of payroll, the support went from 67% to 57%. And then when we explained to them that the additional payroll tax was paid by the employer, but not the employee, that second rate went from 61 back up to 67%. We also listed all the sources of information, the characteristics, but the key findings, people were favored both sources to expand service with stronger support for the payroll tax. And then the online survey, which we just completed, which is the results are attachment D in your packet. I'll ask Steve Dickey to present the findings of that survey.
We also wanted to do an online survey that was open to the general public and was available for anyone interested to participate in. We opened this survey on March 30th and we left it open until May 18th. At the end of the survey period, we had received 2,130 respondents. In just a general sense of open surveys like that, that is considered a fairly good response, especially for that time period. The survey focused on a similar area of gathering of information to the phone survey, but it really focused especially on gathering information on the preferences between the two options to support this. I am going to briefly read the introduction that we had on this survey so it gives you the context. In 2009, Salem-Keizer Transit eliminated Saturday and late evening service to balance the budget. This left many people isolated and greatly inconvenienced. Since that time, the question most frequently asked is, when are we going to have Saturday service back? Salem-Keizer Transit wants to respond to our community's needs and is considering adding service on weekends, later evenings, and some holidays. We also want to reinstate a free bus pass program for middle school and high school aged individuals. In order for this to happen, we need additional operating revenue. Currently, property owners pay 76 cents per thousand of assessed property value to Salem-Keizer Transit as part of the permanent property tax. In an effort to identify a viable funding for the new service, we are evaluating two potential funding options. And then we had the two questions that we requested them to answer were: an employer paid payroll tax of 0.21% of total payroll would cost an employer $20 in payroll taxes for every $10,000 of payroll. This option would be a permanent source of funds and would not require voter approval to continue. And then we asked their opinion on this. The property tax, a 5-year levy of 58 cents per thousand assessed property value, would cost an additional $116 annually for homes with an assessed value of $200,000. At the end of the 5-year limit, voter approval would be needed to continue the levy, and we asked for their opinion on this. And then a third question was asked: if they had to choose between the two, did they have a preference or would they oppose both? So tonight I want to just take a few moments to go through the results of the survey. We also asked a series of demographic questions. Each of these questions in the demographic section were optional. So when you see in your packet and the pie chart, the sections that are identified as unknown, those are the number of respondents who did take the survey but chose not to answer that question. So the first category is age, and what we were doing in this one is we wanted to look to see if indeed we did get a good cross-section representation of the different demographic categories throughout the community. In age, we had a reasonable representation across the age groups. Our lowest was the under 18 category with 4%. Understandably, since this was a voting matter, that would be an expected response. Our highest was the 30 to 44 age grouping with 29% of the people falling into that category. Next, we wanted to know in the Salem-Keizer area what areas were represented. The heaviest were the 97301 and 302, which if you look at where those are located, it makes the most sense in regard to the people that would also be most likely to use our service, since those are the closest into the downtown core. They would also, it's some of the more dense portions of our community as far as population, and unfortunately, sometimes some of our lower income areas are also found in this area where we have more transit-dependent individuals residing. But even with that, we look at the numbers across the board. 301 is a large portion of the downtown area out east, up the center and Market Street corridors, goes as far north as the Parkway. 302 is the primary area of South Salem, south of there, out to Boone Road. 303 is very north part of Salem, and then on through Keizer. 304, and these are general descriptions. 304 is West Salem. 305 is Market Street north and east of I-5. And 306 is south of Boone Road, the very far south part of South Salem. And 317, a lot of people don't realize, is also part of Salem, which is the very southeast corner out in the neighborhood of where Maclay and Lancaster, near the South Lancaster Winco is located. That area, and it also bleeds out in towards Almsville. And then we had other as well, because we had people who were from outside the area also participate, but that was only 3%. We had an income basis. This is one that we do have a very large segment that was under 33,000, and this is household income. When we did have the survey out there, those of you who did take it, you noted that the below 33,000 was actually broken down into smaller categories. That was done in order to be able to pair that with a category coming up, or number in the household, to correlate with federal poverty levels based on household size. But for the reporting purpose of this, we grouped those up to 33,000 at 49%. And then the next largest was in the 50,000 to just under 100,000. Household size, largest grouping here, again, we had one person, two person. In the survey, we also had 3, 4, 5, 6, and then over 6. But the largest group here, 51%, was those with 3 or more in their household. Employment status, the employed was 60%, but we also had reasonable representation from unemployed, retired, and student populations as well. We wanted to know, because we were also proposing the opportunity for the student bus pass program, who had children in school and who did not in the K through 12 age groupings. And we have roughly 2/3 without students actually responding to the survey. Gender was very lopsided. In fact, this is, we picked up a few more male participants toward the end of the survey, but for quite a long time, we were actually under 25% of the male population responding to the survey. Ethnicity, this is a general cross-section. It does not quite match when we look at the Latino and Hispanic population as far as what our community represents. The rest of the groups are fairly close to what the census numbers would represent as well. And bus ridership, we wanted to know, are we just getting people who ride the bus, or do we have people that are occasional riders or never ride? And about half ride at least once a month, less than once a month, about a quarter, and then we had 25% that were non-riders, and we felt that was important to have representation from that group. So the summary results, the next questions were not optional, and they also were in the design of the survey appeared random order so that we did not have a bias for one question of either property tax or payroll tax always appearing first. So the results, first off, we show the property tax levy. We had strongly favor of 31% and somewhat favor of 34%. So if you're looking at a positive response, you're at a 65% for the property tax levy. However, we also had 24% representing opposition to that. And then 11% of undecided. If you were looking at that, that is people who probably still wanted to think about it a while before they made up their mind. On the employer payroll tax option, we had 48% strongly in favor, and then somewhat favorable was 30%. So we have a 78% that land on the positive side of the response, and only 14%, 10% lower than the property tax in outright opposition to this. So when you look at those side by side, you can see that there is a much larger percentage that had a favorable response to the payroll tax as opposed to the property tax. However, when you look at those in context, the opposition that says I would not consider either one was only 15%. We had 57% that said if they had to choose one of the two, they would choose the employer payroll tax. 28% said they would go with the property tax, and 15% said, no, I would prefer not to have either option as the way to pay for this. Now the next section, I want to take a minute and kind of explain how these charts work. It's a lot of data, and we began to do what's called as cross-tabulation, of pulling data in comparison with each other. And we wanted to show some breakdown by the demographic groups of how preferences were shown. So on these, first one is age, but I'm going to use this first to kind of explain how this is structured. So in the table, we have the bars across. We have total on the left-hand column. This would be the full representation of that column. That would mirror, if this was in a pie chart, what we showed for the age category for their total preferences. The first here is the group that opposes. Somewhat favors is the light green. The darker green is strongly favor, and then the undecided group is at the top. So if you look across the bottom, you'll see the age groupings, and then their preferences within each of those age groupings. So this is the property tax. We have the same structure for the payroll tax. And then on the third, we wanted to have a way, and this is where it gets we get a lot going on the screen, but we wanted to have a single place to show both the property tax and the payroll tax for each of the categories together. And then the largest response in each of those bars has been marked with the white dot. So for instance, for ages 18 to 29 in the property tax, their strongest preference was to strongly favor that option. As if you went over to the age 30 to 44 in property tax, their strongest in the preference was in the somewhat favor category for that, but they had the strongly favor in the payroll tax. We also wanted to give another way to look at this data, which was and the numbers themselves. So on your next page, this actually shows both the percentage and the actual number counts by grouping. So again, whoops, we have the total category, each of the age groupings, and then we've highlighted, again, the top in each of these categories to be able to make it easier to see where the preferences lie. So we have this broken down in the age category. We've also done the zip code, and rather than go through each of these individually, there's a lot of information here to digest, but it reflects and mirrors where this tool is going to be of more value is when we begin to speak to groups or speak to individuals or work with different areas. It's a tool for us to be able to have a little bit better understanding of what the preferences were expressed by those groups. So we have the zip code, the income, the household size, and in some of these, for instance, when you look at the property tax household size, there's not a lot of difference between the different groupings. And again, at that point. But then when you get into some of the specifics, that's when you begin to see how they break down. Their employment status, children in school, gender, and ethnicity, and bus ridership. And that concludes the presentation of the data.
So in addition to the survey results, in your packet is also a list of all the written comments that everyone who filled out a survey made. So they're all there for you. So you can see as a result of 6 stakeholder meetings, community forums, a telephone survey, an online survey with over 2,100 respondents, it provides a pretty comprehensive view of the community's thoughts, perceptions, and feelings toward the service plan and the funding options. Local governing bodies who are looking to go out for ballot measure need to file a notice of measure with the Marion County Elections Filing Officer. For the November 3rd election, a deadline for that to happen is September 3rd. As a result, the board must decide when to file and what revenue source prior to any appropriate deadline. So staff is recommending the board accepts the results from the Moving Forward Phase 2 outreach and to provide guidance on next steps for the implementation of Phase 2. And with that, be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Question? Questions? No questions, okay. Are we ready for a motion? Do you have a question?
Well, so we need to accept the report first.
That would be a motion.
The motion is I move that we accept the report of the moving forward part 2, the funding option.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that part? Marcia?
We got our board packet in advance, so I've had a few days to mull this over. I read through all 16 pages of all of the comments. Consistently, Saturday service. And the comments were more toward, for me, it was more consistently the type of service that people wanted. There were very few discussing actually the funding because they just answered those questions. There were a couple who suggested going for part of the gasoline tax, or I think motor vehicle registration, and to clarify, Oregon is constitutionally limited to use the gas tax for roads, things connected to roads. The only little bit of gas tax that is used for something other than that is calculated by figuring out how many people use gasoline in lawnmowers and how much green space needs to be mowed in the state by using. It's very crazy, but that's the only gas tax that is used for anything other than roads. So we've been talking about this for a long time. And given the results of the survey and the need to move forward, I would like to move that we place a payroll tax before the voters in November to provide funding for weekend service, later evening service, and return the bus pass program to middle school and high school students, as well as returning holiday service except for Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's.
And I will second that.
I think we're out of order. I think we need to do the first
Oh.
motion first.
Oh, we forgot to vote on accepting the report.
That's right. Okay, so any other discussion on accepting the report? Okay, I'll go ahead. All in favor of accepting the report indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Now you can do it, Marcia.
Oh, okay. Well, then we'll have a roaring discussion. So I will restate the motion so that everybody knows what I'm thinking. I move that we place a payroll tax before the voters in November to provide funding for weekend service, later evening service, and return the bus pass program to middle school and high school students, as well as returning holiday service except for Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's.
And I will second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Discussion. Marcia.
I've been thinking about this for a long time as far as the things that we know the community needs. We're a community just shy of 300,000 population that we serve. And we have people in the community who are transit dependent, so thereby they're stranded on Saturdays and Sundays or have to cage rides by taxis. We're continually compared to why don't we do it like TriMet, why don't we do it like Lane County? Lane County is a better thing to compare us to because their population is about the same. Their payroll tax in Lane County, and it would be, and it's assessed at more than 3 times what we would be assessing. But their payroll tax in 2012, 2013, the last actual numbers I could find, was just shy of $25 million. And then there's the self-employment tax that's added in. And I would say to people in the community who wonder about the payroll tax as an option, that, you know, for business investment, we're competing with Portland and Lane County. And there's no way that we can compete as effectively if we don't have a decent public transportation system. All this new survey research from 2010 on talks about millennials, and they want transportation options. They want fewer cars. They like to bike. They like to walk. They take public transit. And I'm concerned that by keeping our transit service to Monday through Friday, got to get it done by 8 o'clock or you're out of luck mentality will keep us from having those millennials that we need to replace our aging workforce come to town and live. So I'm making an economic argument for the payroll tax because it's going to be good for the economy.
Thanks, Marcia. Kate?
So I want to comment on the individuals that from the chamber that vehemently oppose this, just like the gentleman that showed up tonight and he was losing his transportation. I want it stated that it was heard that the people that will be paying the employee tax spoke out and with concerns at the chamber at least, and the chamber doesn't speak for every business. With that being said, I do believe that strong communities that have quality of life, jobs, should have a solid transportation system. I also believe that transit does not compete with cars in the sense that people use transit as a way to be able to afford cars as an option if they choose that option. And Greg from Lane County always said, transit is the great equalizer. So I just want to go on the record to say that did hear the business owners that are saying they feel this is going to be a financial burden. I hope that there will be an effort to show them return on investment, jobs, quality of life, why somebody would want to move to Salem, parks, transit are reasons you move schools, are reasons you move to a city. So I don't take this lightly. It's not that we all don't want weekends and Saturdays. It's always been the method of, as most projects, how's it going to be paid for?
Okay, anyone else? John?
Yes, I have 3 comments, and I hope they'll be brief. First off, in regard to Mr. Patterson, who spoke to us about not wanting to lose the D Street route, he certainly has my sympathy. 7 years ago, I lost my route, and it really had a negative consequence. So yes, as a board member, I feel very immediately when somebody loses access to this infrastructure item. On the other hand, as far as we can tell, based on our comprehensive system analysis, for every one person who loses access to transit or is not going to be able to use transit, we hope to replace them with 3 who will be able to use transit. Unfortunately, those 3 will not be able to come and speak in favor of the change because currently they don't even know who they are. So we'll just have to see and place our faith in the experience of transit agencies both here and across the country. Second item on the extended service, the phase 2, I think support for doing that is widespread. I don't think we even need to spend time debating that. And the question we're looking at right now is funding. And the way I looked at the funding was what's equitable, what's fair, what's appropriate. And if we choose this property tax proposal, then the district will actually wind up with 2 funding sources. One is our existing property tax base, and the other would be an additional payroll tax. And I think that provides a pretty good distribution because the property tax portion everybody in the community will pay for. But then the question comes, who actually benefits from transit? And my feeling is that aside from the transit riders, the greatest benefactor is business. Virtually everybody on the bus is taking the ride for a business purpose. Going to work, coming home from work, going to get their haircut, going shopping, going to the doctor. Virtually everybody on the bus is going with the intention of spending or making money, and that's business.
Very good, John, thank you. Anybody else? Brett?
Yeah, sure. So, this is one of the big questions, I think, of what's facing us. And the thought that I have had continually is that weekend service is an essential part of what we need to do going forward, doing one or the other. In effect, we'll all pay in some way. Either if my employer pays it, then the economist in me says at some point that gets passed through as a property tax. That's something that I'm paying as well. So the mechanism is more payroll versus property. It's us who's still paying it in some way or other. And so given the substantial support that all of our outreach has showed for the property tax, or for the payroll tax, it makes sense to me that even though there are going to be some businesses that are opposed and maybe a campaign against it, I think all in all, I view additional attractive, I see who's going to lose if we don't have the Saturday, Sunday service. And I think Marcia said it really well, that the people that are going to lose are the businesses, the economy. I'm a millennial, and having weekend service is very attractive. And so kind of like what John said, the people who are going to want that weekend service aren't in our population yet in many ways, but are going to be attracted here by the businesses that can then, you can have access to the businesses on the weekend. So I don't buy the Chamber's statement that payroll tax spreads it more, or that property tax spreads it more equally to those who receive the benefit. I see that we're already paying property tax, so having a payroll tax spreads it at least where the businesses also are contributing. In my mind, that's a more fair distribution. So I think that going the payroll tax makes the most sense for lots of reasons. And at the end of the day, the thing that I'm the most interested in is actually having it, because I think everyone's going to win. I think the businesses are going to win, even though it's kind of hard to see because it's more of a long-term win with, and then the fact that we don't have to go get it every 5 years, I think is also a big bonus.
I'm probably the only one here that's had experience with payroll tax. I had a business in Portland and paid the TriMet tax for years, so I do support this. I had employees, my office was in downtown Portland in the Galleria building, and of course, as you know, parking is very precious there, and many of my employees not only benefited from the transit system, but I gave them transit passes as a benefit of their employment to get to work, so I didn't have to buy parking for them. And the transit passes were cheaper than the employment, or than the parking fees. And I think that some of our employers are going to benefit from this from the standpoint it's going to open a pool of employees that are not available on weekends and late evenings. They can now take transit to get to and from work. It's also going to open up a customer base, because now there are people who are working the 5 days that we operate, and they cannot take leisure trips on the weekends to come downtown for theater or shopping or various activities, even some of our great festivals. This will provide a lot of benefits that will flow right back into the community and into the businesses. And when you look at the rate that we're proposing, if you have $500,000 worth of payroll, it is only $1,050 per year. And that's a very nominal amount when you consider the benefits that we receive. It's also an equity issue, because we are putting tax dollars into the other systems, and when we don't have transit, then those people that are transit dependent are second-class citizens in this city, and we want to eliminate that.
Yeah, briefly, a lot has been said. So I too have paid a payroll tax in Portland, so I know what that meant. It was a shock, just because I didn't know about it until someone said, hey, you got to do this too, fill it out. But I think the value of the service that we're going to provide is worth the effort. And so I'm going to support this motion. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Marcia?
Just so that if there's anybody watching, and if anybody doesn't know, the state of Oregon already pays all transit districts, and in lieu of payroll tax, at 6/10 of 1%. So that's 3 times the amount that our economists, basically almost 3 times the amount that our economists told us that we would need to assess in the Salem area to get the $5 million. So that entity is paid and has been paying. Curiously enough, we get twice as much of the in lieu payroll tax from the state as Eugene does. So that's the only place where we get more money for basically about the same size city. So just another little tidbit for informational purposes.
And that's because we have the most state employees. Gee, I wonder why. Okay, are we ready for a vote?
Can I say one more thing?
Go ahead, Brad.
The other item that I wanted to mention, in thinking about, yeah, I'll pass on it. Maybe if it comes back, I'll.
That happens to
I
me.
guess I'm acting like, yeah. Anyway,
Like you're saying.
yeah. I didn't want to say it, but.
Okay. Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. Are we ready to do it? Okay, all those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, who's going to do the second one?
I would like to, I move that the general manager prepare a payroll tax ballot measure for the November 2015 election based on a 0.21% of payroll for review by the board and other public officials having jurisdiction over ballot measures prior to the deadline for placing on the ballot.
You changed it. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Legal advice, that's good. That's good to have. Okay, discussion on this part. Marcia?
This lets us move forward now knowing what we're doing, but gives staff and legal counsel time to do all the nitty-gritty of putting together the ballot measure and without, forcing us to do it by a particular date. We just have to have the ballot measure prepared by the filing deadline, which Alan gave us earlier in the meeting. So the reason why it's an open-ended date is just because we don't know how long it'll take to get everything done. It may be the June meeting, but most particularly it'll probably be the July meeting.
Others?
I might just clarify, because this is a percentage and people sometimes confuse how percentages run. This is 0.21%, but if you write it out as a decimal fraction, it is 0.0021. And just trying to make that as clear as we can, because there has been some misunderstanding about what that number is.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Are we ready for a vote? Looks like we are. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. Okay, are we through with this? Are we through with it? Anything else on this particular issue? Seeing none, we'll move on to the comprehensive Title VI equity analysis.
Matt Berggren will present the staff report.
President Thompson, members of the board, I'm here today to talk about equity. So what is an equity analysis? Today I'm talking about moving forward phase one, the plan that we plan to implement on September 8th, 2015. The goal of this equity analysis is to ensure that our plan does not disparately impact the minority population in our service area or disproportionately burden the low-income population. So although this is the equity analysis, more specifically, it's the Title VI equity analysis. So when I say Title VI, what I'm referring to is Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. What the FTA does is they create a circular that describes how transit agencies should interpret the Civil Rights Act of 1984, and then the transit agencies create a program every 3 years related to that circular. So our program, the board adopted last year, is what we use to create this equity analysis. And this equity analysis is the first one we've done for a service change, a major service change, since it was created in 2014. So I'm going to go over a few definitions. There's a lot of, with Title VI, there's a lot of wonky terms and words and stuff like that. So I'm just going to go through some of the definitions that I'll be using throughout the presentation. So a major service change, we define it in our program as a route having revenue hours increase or decrease by 25% or more, a route having miles increase or decrease by 25% or more, or a new transit route being established. An adverse effect is a decreased level of transit service, either in span in days and hours or frequency, or also a decrease in access to transit. And we've been using a quarter mile for regular service, so 30 and 60-minute service, and a half mile for frequent service, 15-minute service. And that's what was used by Jarrett Walker and Associates in the comprehensive service analysis of what this plan was based on. And then there's two kinds of analyses we're doing. There's the disparate impact analysis and the disproportionate burden analysis. So disparate impact is talking about the minorities in our community, making sure, and how we define minority is non-white, non-Hispanic. And what we're looking at is trying to make sure that they're not disproportionately or disparately impacted by our service change in relation to the non-minorities in our area. And then the disproportionate burden analysis looks at the same thing, but it's low income instead of minority, but it's the same process. And our current service area has about a 32.1% minority population and 17.1% low income population. And for this analysis, low income is considered 100% federal poverty level. So just a little background on the proposed change and the steps coming up to this equity analysis. Here's our current service. It's kind of hard to see on the screen, but the lines are colored based on frequency. A lot of 30 and 60-minute service, a little bit of 15-minute service. With our proposed service, we're moving to more 15-minute service, more focus on the big corridors. Over the course of the last year and a half, we started with our comprehensive service analysis by Jarrett Walker and Associates. We took that plan, brought it to the community, did a lot of community outreach, made a lot of changes based on what the community said, made changes to the plan, brought it back out, did another round of public outreach, and then the board adopted the plan on February 26th this year. So I just want to make the point that there's been a lot of community input that's gone into this plan. Now to get to the actual major service change. So this is a table of all of our routes that are in our current system, and I've grouped together all the routes that are considered a major service change, and it's pretty much all of them. The only ones that aren't are routes 3, 18, 1X, 2X, 91, and 92. But if you look at a map of our system and split it up by census tract, which is the unit that we use to measure population, because that's what we get from the federal government, all of our census tracts are affected by the service change. And the way our Title VI program is actually set up, it's designed to be looking at a route change or maybe a small grouping of route changes, not looking at the entire system. So if you actually apply our Title VI program to this analysis, we can say that 100% of the minorities in our community will be affected by this change. 100% of non-minorities will be affected. Those are equal, no disparate impact, no disproportional burden. Same with low income and higher income populations. So by applying those rules to the overall system, we would just automatically say our service change is equitable, it's affecting everyone equally, we can move on. But that's not really the point of Title VI analysis. It's not the point of the equity analysis. So we wanted to go beyond that. So we went a bit beyond the scope of our program to do both a system-wide analysis and a stop-level analysis. So I'm going to try to explain that real quick. So first, the system-level analysis. This is a map of our system split up by census tract. What we did is we took each route and applied their service hours to a census tract. So for example, if there was a route that went through 2 census tracts, and let's say it had 10 service hours on it, and it went equally in both census tracts, we would apply 5 of those service hours to the first census tract and 5 to the second census tract. So we did that for the whole system for our current routes and for our proposed routes, and then we compared those. So at the census tract level, we were able to say, is there an increase in service or a decrease in service, and by how much? So again, it's kind of hard to see on this map, but the blues and the lighter blues are an increase in service, and the reds and lighter reds are a decrease in service. And although there's a bit of red on a lot of the areas, there's actually there's more increases than there are decreases overall. Now for the actual analyses, starting with the disparate impact test, which is focused on the minority populations, we wanted to look at what share of non-minorities are benefiting from our service, what share of minorities are benefiting. So if you look at the bottom bar, that represents what percent of the non-minorities are benefiting. So in this case, we have 54.4% of them are benefiting. Our goal is to have that bar and the top bar be about equal. The lowest threshold that would be acceptable is for the minority, the share of the minorities that are benefiting to be 43.5%. We're actually way above that. We're at 59.5. So even though the green bar on the top doesn't have to be farther to the right than on the bottom, it is. So we're actually benefiting the minority population slightly more than we're benefiting the non-minority population.
So, quick question.
Yeah.
Is the bottom bar, should that say non-minority?
Yeah, sorry,
okay.
that was a typo.
Okay.
Should have clarified. Yeah, the bottom is non-minority, the top is minority.
Okay.
And then similar analysis for low income. Bottom is higher income population, top is low income. So the higher income population, 56.5% of the higher income population are benefiting from the service change, and 59.2% of the low income population are benefiting. So in an ideal world, these would always be equal. We get a little bit of buffer room to make sure it's statistically significant, and we're not only within the buffer, but we're on the other side. So we can conclude on the system-wide level, there's no disproportionate burden, no disparate impact. We're being equitable. We also wanted to take a closer look at a stop level analysis. So this is getting really detailed, and it's much more detailed than a regular route analysis. But we just wanted to make sure that we were at least talking about every place that was seeing a removal of service or a decrease in service, so that we at least addressed it and explained why, and made sure we had a logical reason for everything. So one thing I want to explain before we get into the stop level analysis is our Title VI census tracts. So there's two elements to our Title VI census tracts. The first is the minority census tracts. The second is the low income census tracts. So we know that 32.1% of our overall population are minorities. So we looked at all of the census tracts that had a higher than regional average, higher than 32.1% minority population, and those are represented on this map in gray. We did the same thing with low income. About 17.1% of our low income of our population is low income. So all of these census tracts in gray are census tracts that have higher than regional average low income populations. By combining them, we come up with our Title VI populations. So these are all of the census tracts that are considered Title VI census tracts for this analysis. The reason this is important is because in terms of Title VI, at the stop level analysis, there's only a potential disparate impact or disproportional burden if a stop is within this gray zone. If it's outside of the gray zone, there could be a potential adverse effect. It could be problematic for people, but it wouldn't be considered a disparate impact or a disproportional burden by the FTA's rules and by our Title VI program. So this map is kind of busy because it's literally every stop that we have in our system. And again, it's kind of hard to see on this screen. But what we did is we took all of the service on our current stops and then all the service on our proposed future stops, and we compared them. And the way we did that is we said, if you're standing at a bus stop, how many times is a bus going to go by you over the course of a day? So for example, on an hourly route, 16 hours of service, you get a score of 16. If you have 30-minute service, 32, it doubles. So we took that number from our current service and compared it to that of the future planned service, so we were able to see the changes on the stop level. So in blue are stops added, green increased service, gray no change, orange service decreased, and red service removal. So I'm actually going to pull out the orange, which is the service decreased, and the red, which is stopped removed, because those are the two areas where we need to focus on to make sure there's no kind of negative impact. So first I'm going to start with the red, which is the removed service. So we have about 171 stops that are being removed as part of the moving forward plan. And what you're seeing here in green is actually the walk buffer from our proposed routes. So the idea is that we're removing a lot of service, but we have other routes that are coming in and replacing that service, or we have service within a quarter mile or a 5-minute walk of regular service, or a half mile or about a 10-minute walk for an able-bodied person of frequent service. So that's what the green is here. So there's a lot of stops in there that are within that buffer. There are some stops that are outside of that buffer, but they're not in the Title VI census tracts. So although they could be problematic from an equity perspective, from a Title VI perspective, they're not. The main stops I want to focus on are the one up in the northern area on the current Route 14 along Salem Industrial Boulevard, and the 4 along Turner Road. And I think I don't know if I have a little laser thing here, how that works. There we go. So this one right here, and these ones down here. So this one up here, according to the ride check done by Jarrett Walker and Associates, has average ons and offs of 0. So we wouldn't really be having a disparate impact or disproportional burden on the people there, because there's very, very, very low ridership. Our numbers are showing 0. It's probably frequented every now and then, but beyond that, it's just beyond the quarter-mile threshold from regular service. It's just, I think, 0.6 miles. The bigger concern is along Turner Road. And this is something we've all known as a concern throughout the moving forward process. We wanted to bring service all the way down to Lakeside Village and Paradise Island. We had issues turning the bus around there. We tried working with the community there, with the owner of the developer that owns that area, to turn the bus around, but the streets are not designed for buses, and he declined. We ended up moving the service onto the Pennsylvania Loop to restore their 30-minute service. So in the end, we ended up going with serving those people, those 140 people, versus the other ones. So that was a potential concern, but we believe that on the whole, we did our best to serve those people. And since this system has the potential more of a potential to help minorities and low-income people, it would be considered equitable.
I have a quick question for
Yeah.
you. There's along the border of the Title VI census tract.
Yeah.
There's some down in the south. Are those just outside the
Say it
title?
again?
I can't tell from the map, but I'm just curious about those that are down in the south that are.
Yeah, they're on the other side of the census tract.
Okay, so
because we have one directional service there.
Okay, so just barely outside of that.
Yeah, you could consider them problematic as well, and we'd have the same justification that we looked into the service, the level of ridership there doesn't justify adding this or keeping the service there, and overall, the system wide, it's
okay. And there is a northbound service that picks people up on the east side of the road, basically. Is that what you said?
No. Currently the service is clockwise.
Okay.
Or sorry, yeah. I don't remember the exact direction of it, but they're on the west side of the census tract.
Okay.
So.
And there isn't much development on the east side of
Right.
road.
It's mostly fields.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I think there's plans there in the future, but
Oh, so it's currently one way that's going away.
it's currently one way. Yes.
Oh, okay.
It's Route 6. And this table's in your packet that goes into the actual details of what percent. What I did is I took these stops and segmented them. So I put them into segments that I could describe to make it easier to talk about. And I talk about which ones are considered to have a potential disparate impact and disproportionate burden, and which ones are not. So those details are all in your packet. And then the last thing I want to talk about are the stops with the reduced service. So we have about 50 or 60 of these that would be considered a potential disparate impact or disproportionate burden. Again, there's some up in Keizer, some down in South Salem, where they're seeing a decrease in service of more than 25%. That's the threshold that we use. But those are outside of the Title VI census tracts. The ones inside the Title VI census tracts, we wanted to explain and walk through why we're removing service or what went into that. Or we pretty much had 4 options. It was either avoid the situation, mitigate it, minimize, or explain it. So I'll just quickly walk through some of the stops, some of the segments that we looked at. So up in Hayesville, along these streets right here, there's about 13 stops that are seeing about a 50% reduction in service. That's because we're moving from 30-minute service to 60-minute service. And one thing we've done to minimize the impact there is actually the stop with the most ridership is the Stephens Middle School stop. And we were able to, the original plan we had, the schedule didn't work for the students. They were gonna have to wait 40 minutes before, 40 minutes after the school let out. To get onto the bus. So we ended up being able to switch the times of the hourly route so it actually worked for the students without having to add that 30-minute service back in. Another thing we did at the airport park and ride, right down here, We were going to remove service there. We ended up bringing back, it's currently 30-minute service. We're bringing back hourly service with the Route 4, the new Route 4. And we looked into using the Route 4A to bring back 30-minute service, but there wasn't enough time in the schedule to do so. There's also a number of stops in downtown Salem that are seeing a reduction in service. Overall, it's about a 50% reduction in service, and that mostly has to do with rerouting of the buses to be more efficient once we get downtown. But there's a lot of service right around them that people have access to. There's also a number of stops along Wainema Place, North Lancaster Drive, Portland Road, and then a few on Market Street, right over here, that are seeing a reduction in service, but they're within a quarter mile of regular service or half mile of frequent service. So the people there are pretty well covered. And there's also some stops along 17th D, Sunnyside, and then down 25th and Fairview that are seeing a reduction in service. And our justification for those is that overall, since there's this service will is likely to positively impact minority populations and low-income populations, and since we looked into all the different options, those are justified because of that. And again, we have tables in the packet that actually walk through each of these segments, what percent minority they are, in the census tracts around them, what percent impoverished, and what percent of a decrease in service those stops are receiving. So not every rider will benefit from these major service changes, but we believe that on the whole, this service will work better for more people, and we believe that these benefits can be realized without disparately impacting minority riders or minorities in the community and low-income populations in the community. So staff recommends that we move forward with the service change plan and that it is equitable. And I'll take any questions people have.
Questions? John?
It's not a question, it's a comment.
Okay.
I had feared that this was going to be deadly boring.
Mm.
It was actually fascinating. You guys
Thanks.
did a great job on this.
Thanks. It's hard. It took a long time to understand it and a long time to make sure we were doing it right. So
Yeah,
we consulted
yeah,
with TriMet a lot and tried to make sure it was.
I was impressed with the system-wide changes. That really complicated the business for you, and I applaud your efforts to look through down to the stop-level analysis. That was great.
Thanks.
Marcia?
Along the Turner Road, it's, for as long as I've been on the board, it's been off and on and off and on for having service. There are a lot of seniors in that area, so at the same time as we pull the service out, are we going to do something like remind them about the red line and do some marketing outreach? And likewise in the D Street area.
I don't know about those plans, but I can talk to the marketing department about that, definitely.
Because I think that knowing the city as well as I do, I think the D Street is going to have some of those issues as well. And so if we can make sure that we market this to those areas, maybe even before the route goes away, like maybe in August.
Yeah, I'll bring it up with the marketing department. Any other questions?
Okay, ready for a motion?
That's right. It's got to be there somewhere, doesn't it?
Apparently I'm making a motion. I move that the board accept the moving forward phase 1, Title 6 service equity analysis and submit it, as submitted in attachment B.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Good job. Select a board member to review the general manager's comprehensive performance evaluation. Is there a nomination? Go
Paula
ahead.
Dixon can make the staff report first,
Okay.
if you want.
Oh, Fern, sure. Sorry, Paula.
Good evening, President Thompson and directors. Every year, the board completes a performance evaluation of the general manager. As part of the process adopted by the board, each board member individually completes an evaluation form, which is given to me and compiled into a single document. One board member is selected to review the compilation and make sure that it is accurate. Once that's done, it's distributed to the full board. The performance evaluation is conducted in the June meeting. It's confidential, except any changes made to the general manager's compensation are made in public session. So the action before you tonight is to select the board member to review the compilation of the board evaluations.
Okay, let's see, do we have a motion kind of thing in here someplace? We need to do that? Or is that just selecting somebody?
Yeah.
Is there a motion we have to make?
Yeah, you select,
You see it? Okay, go ahead. You see it?
Do we know who we,
Well,
okay,
do we have to put John in there?
Yeah, I think you do have.
I move the board select Director John Hamill to review the composite performance evaluation of the general manager.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I guess it's appropriate that I made the motion, given that I did it last year.
Yeah,
But
there you go.
it was a good experience. You'll enjoy it, John.
It's my turn. That's my comment.
And he resigned himself to do it.
Right.
Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you, Paula. Okay, we have no information items tonight. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, we go right into reports.
Jared.
Performance report.
Jared Chalk will present the report.
Good evening, President Thompson and members of the board. I join you again this evening to discuss the performance report for our various services. As usual, the entire packet is available in your board packet, and I encourage you to review it. We have pulled out several of the performance measures to discuss with you this evening. Starting out on a really good note, boardings are up 3.38%. And actually, this continues a trend that we've seen of our ridership increasing quarter compared to the previous year's quarter, report after report. So this is a very promising trend. There's a slide at the end that I'm excited to present that kind of shows where we are on a year-to-year basis and you know, hopefully where we're going with the motion that you passed this evening. Boardings per hour are up 5.14%. What that means is that since our boardings have outpaced any changes to revenue hours, it means that we're more productive. Boardings per hour is our measurement of productivity. It's how effective we are at providing our services. We've gone from 21.4 passengers per hour to 22.5 this quarter compared to the same quarter in the previous year. It's a great trend. Looking at that boardings per hour on a route-by-route basis, you'll be familiar with this chart. You can see that we've added the target goal for 25 passengers per hour for our corridor services, 20 for connector, 10 for circulator. The names will be changing after September when we move forward with moving forward. But generally, those standards will stay the same. And our changes should address and improve the boardings per hour in most of these categories. You can see that generally we're tracking well. In fact, this chart is actually very similar to what it looked like the last quarter, the last time that we talked about this, except everything's moved to the right a little bit because almost every route has seen improvement in boardings, but also boardings per hour. Our revenue hours are down 1.9%. It's actually a fairly small anomaly, and it has mostly to do with some modifications that we were making to Route 11 a year ago that we're still seeing the effects of that in our data. We were, first we decreased and then had to increase the number of vehicles on that route, trying to find the Goldilocks level, essentially. So we're still seeing some residual movement from that. Revenue miles, however, are up 1.49%. This isn't actual miles, though. As we start better utilizing our planning tools, we are more accurately notating the routes which our vehicles operate on. And so where a route used to terminate on the map essentially looking like a U-turn, we're now able to actually track the course that the vehicle takes. So actual mileage hasn't increased. It's just that our planned miles, what you see here, now more closely aligns with what's actually happening on the road. So that's where this relatively minor increase comes from. Across our other services, this chart, it's based on percentages, so it exaggerates the impact on red line slightly. There's actually a 460 passenger drop this period over the previous and red line. We believe that that's due in a large part to the fare change, making red line less attractive for cherry lift passengers. At the same time, cherry lift has increased, and a large percentage of that increase is due to that transition from red line. Carts has decreased. It's around a 2% decrease. It's really within the a cyclical pattern, what you might expect. Sometimes they're up, sometimes they're down. I wanted to include a slide that talked a little bit about fares and fare demographics because, as you recall, electronic fare collection is expanding next week to include the day pass, something that we're really excited about. And since we're doing our quarterly performance report, I wanted to take a minute and show really what that means for us. So on the left, the pie chart shows the daily average trips. Trip is a boarding, essentially. It's every time that somebody flashes a pass or swipes an electronic card on a bus. And you can see that right now about 44% of our trips are 30-day EFC cards. 37% day passes, 19% one way. On the right-hand chart are our daily average passengers. The difference between the two is that a passenger might board 1, 2, 3, 4. We actually have a passenger that I think rode 19 different buses in a given day, the last time I looked at the analysis. But that's the actual person, essentially, that is boarding. And you can see that about 34% of our passengers use 30-day EFC cards, 21% use day passes, and 45% use either one way or they are in a different fare category, such as employee pass, or there's any number of other system-related things that can occur, so it's kind of lumped into one way. But the real message here is that of our trips, approximately 80% of them, 30-day and soon day pass, will be handled electronically, which is a boon for the passengers because the cards are easier to purchase. They're opening up new avenues for us to sell the fares, but it also provides us a real wealth of data about where those individual cards are being used. And 80% of all of our trips will now be occurring using the electronic method, and it will be affecting over half of our passengers. So with the performance report, I thought it a good time to share how our fares actually occur.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Do you think
Dr.
some
Coy?
of those one-ways are really the same person that you just don't have data for?
I think that it could be there. In the past, particularly, there's a savings if you were to do 2 one-way trips. It's conceivable that somebody might do a single trip, and the thing is, we'll never actually be able to capture that. Not conceivably, anyway. So there will always be some of that, but by and large, we make the assumption that a passenger would purchase a day pass if they were riding 2 or more times in a day. And you can see actually with our current data, and this will be improving after Monday, about the average 30-day cardholder uses their card 4 times per day. And the average day pass holder, from what we can tell, uses their cards uses that flash pass about 3 times per day.
So with the new passes, we're going to have a more accurate number on that day pass number.
Yes, we will, because we'll actually every card has a serial number, and so we don't know who has that serial number, but you can see that this same serial number that was used at 8 in the morning on Route 1 was used at 9 o'clock in the morning on Route 19. which is very useful for planning purposes because we can actually see, in that case, the 119 combination. One of the items that we're looking at right now is what is the effect of the new Route 1 in the moving forward changes. Essentially combines Route 19 and Route 1. And we are potentially losing, we're not losing them, but our count could decrease because of the transfers, because nobody's transferring downtown anymore if they had previously gone from the 1 to the 19. So by looking at that fare data, we can see that what the potential impact actually could be for a reduction in transfers, for instance. So we have that now for 30-day pass holders, and we can guess, extrapolate, and say, well, the 30-day pass holder, they tend to have the same travel patterns as the day pass holders. But now we'll actually know.
So are you able to make an estimate, if you look at the data, of what the ridership's going to do once we implement?
All right. Do you mean specifically for the Route 119 combination?
Yeah, or even overall. I mean, because when you come back with the next quarter of data and it shows that things have changed significantly because of the change, that'll be an interesting discussion to be able to say, you know, has our ridership really increased or decreased?
It will be interesting. We are going to be taking a data adventure with the board over the over the coming year, and there are going to be some challenges related to how we do those performance reports because everything's changing, and we've done some projections on what ridership might look like, but we're changing so many variables at the same time that the results are kind of wonky, honestly. And we can look at transfers, and that number was actually. It wasn't for 30-day pass holders transferring from the 1 to the 19. It was, I think, like 50 total transfers a day. I could get the details on that specific one. But system-wide, it's going to be a little more difficult. So one of the things that we're really researching the ability to do is to take our reporting. You know how we have those the route level reports. They're valuable, but they're going to be very difficult to compare from current service to the new service, because we're going, we're gonna have 14 routes, the numbers are gonna be different, and even if the numbers weren't different, the route alignments have all changed. We're researching ways of bringing that maybe to the stop level, because most of, as was mentioned in our earlier presentation, we've had 100, just north of 100 stops removed and just north of 100 stops added in. And we have around 800 total in the system. So although routes are changing, stops are mostly staying the same. So we're hopeful that we can use the consistency of our stops to create a meaningful conversation about how ridership is changing after the moving forward change. I hope that answers your question.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
And actually, we'll have the benefit of about 90 days worth of information with the new passes before everything changes, so that can help with the extrapolation a little.
That certainly will help a little. Director Krebs, you got a question?
Yes, in fact, I was writing a number of questions down which you answered. But I was wondering if there's a possibility of somehow utilizing the sale of the media, like the 30-day passes and the 1-day passes and the cash fares, to kind of get an idea. That doesn't give you a ridership because you buy a day pass or a pass and you ride multiple times, but it gives us an idea if our production is staying about the same, because if we're selling the same number of passes and fares every month, then we should be theoretically holding some sort of balance with our production. If you understand what I mean, if we sell 10,000 passes and day tickets every month while the old system's operating, and then if we go into the new system, those same people are going to be buying passes and tickets, and it should give us an idea if we're selling approximately the same number, and that would be another way to judge whether our patronage is, because that's one of my concerns, is when we start combining these routes, somebody who's buying a day pass can now buy a one-way ticket and go all the way from South Salem, Battle Creek up to Keizer Station, and that may change change these reports significantly, and we are going to have to kind of massage them. But I'm more concerned about criticism because people come back and say, well, your ridership has fallen off because you changed the routes. And I don't think that is the case. It will be a case that we won't have as many boardings because people are staying on a bus. It's a through operation.
I think I agree that it could happen. I don't think that our numbers will really go down. I think overall we'll see an increase. And I think that the sales figures that you're alluding to, how many passes we're selling, we should be able to draw meaning from that as well and combine that with the ridership picture to hopefully come up with, yeah.
Just sort of to give us statistics that we can argue with if we're confronted with our system. I honestly believe this new system will generate more rides also. I think I'm very excited about it.
Other questions?
Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
The last slide this evening, we discussed how we've been comparing fiscal year quarter to fiscal year quarter, and how that really is valuable, but that there's a bigger picture that we can really paint with our ridership, and we wanted to take an opportunity to share that here. This slide, which has many colors on it, which are a little bit difficult to see on this screen with the projector, shows our quarter to quarter change over time, with winter being the kind of the blue, and summer looks yellow on here, green, spring, and noting when our significant events have occurred, so that we can show when our major events affected or perhaps did not affect our passengers or our ridership. So much of this you have seen before. The removal of Saturday service and the system redesign, the state employee bus pass program being discontinued, all occurred in that 2009 timeframe. But yet ridership didn't really go down that much. It did go down, but it didn't go down as much as we thought that it would, because of that little item in there. Let's see if I can. The Betsy grant starter, the business energy tax credit. And so, a meaningful way of looking at this might be to have a segment of each of those lines that was student passes, because if you could see that, it would account for, it was around almost 25% of our ridership during that period. And when the business energy tax credit was not renewed in September of 2011, our ridership dramatically decreased overnight almost. And what we were really feeling wasn't Betsy so much as it was the redesign, the removal of Saturday service, which is why I think that chart is somewhat relevant to the other conversations that you've been having this evening. That even things like a fare structure change in April of 2013, adding a transit center in Keizer, they have the Keizer effect affected many routes, but system-wide, it's the removal of Saturday service, the Betsy grant, the state bus pass program. It's those major milestones that really seem to have the most profound impact on our ridership. So anyway, we talk a lot about this quarter compared to last quarter, but we recognize that it's also helpful to look at it even a little bit further away sometimes and look at it, what it's been like over the past years. So happy to answer any questions on this slide.
One of the other things that's not up there is that we cut back on evening hours as well. And having been on the board, when we added evening hours and the buses no longer left the last one, I think it was 6:45, maybe 6:15. When we added evening hours, we saw a jump in daytime ridership, not necessarily all in the evening hours, but in that ability to get home just a little bit later and that guarantee. So it's not only the removal of Saturday service and the redesign in there, it's the decrease in evening hours, I think, also has it. But that's why, and then the difference when we didn't get the Betsy grant compared, those rides count when we turn those numbers into the federal government. And so it not only was a loss of the money because of the Betsy money, but it was a loss of federal funding because of the rides. And it was a loss to the kids for having less access.
Others? Thanks, Jared.
All right, thank you.
And now we move on to the rideshare report.
Roxanne Rolls will present the report.
Good evening, President Thompson, members of the board. This is the Chariots Rideshare third quarter report. We administer the Drive Less Connect database locally, and it's provided through ODOT. We have a total now number of users of 3,674, new users 253. As I've talked about, ride match searches being performed. That's a cumulative number over the last 3 years. That's people actually getting in the database and saying they want to find a ride matching partner. And then ride match request sent is where they actually send a request to someone else in the database. I was asked to start comparing quarter by quarter, year by year, quarter by quarter. So this slide shows the third quarter from the 11-12 year, 12-13, 13-14, 15, 14-15. Said that too fast. As you can see, the number of users in the database continues to grow. And it grows because of things like our Carpool Karma campaign. And that's really hard to say. This campaign was a joint effort where we combined forces with Lane Transit and the Cascades West Rideshare in Albany and Corvallis. So we covered 7 counties. We did some PSA radio spots. In fact, I got to do that. It was a lot of fun Sunday morning. We had billboards, we had mailers, we talked with our ETCs, we did some geo-targeted Google, we had a Facebook page, Statesman Journal, Salem Weekly, Facebook, and some theater ads. And from that, I don't have all of the final numbers because the survey, we did a pre-survey and a post-survey. The post-survey closed today, but preliminarily I can tell you we had over 8,000 carpool trips were logged in the 3-month time that we were running this campaign. We had 170 work sites participating, 86 brand new carpools registered coming into Salem. So that's the number that we never get, is how many carpools are actually formed. So now we know 86 carpools for the 3 months. And we'll do another survey in about 3 more months to see if they're continuing. Couple projects you've heard quite a bit about. The PACE team from Willamette University, they finished up their project. They presented the information to their university. They gave us all of the information, all the artwork, the information that they collected as far as developing a walking map app. That's hard to say too. The map is currently being bid by 3 printers. Once I find out which printer offers the best value, we'll get it printed and we'll get it distributed for free. Another project that we're just finishing up is our strategic plan. From that, we've established our goals. We've looked at the recommendations that the consultant has made, and early in June, we'll actually be able to start putting some of those recommendations into action. One of the primary recommendations that we'll be working with is developing a website that includes all transportation options information for this region. While you would think there would be one that exists, there's many that have some information, but not all of it. So we're going to try to build this one-stop shop, and hopefully when somebody needs transportation option information, they can go to one place and get it, so they don't have to click through and go here and go there and call ODOT and call us. Hopefully it'll eliminate a lot of the confusion that happens with folks looking for information. Upcoming, we're getting into the midst of our individualized marketing campaign. This is a project we're doing with Alta Planning and ODOT Public Transit. We're doing the campaign in the 2 neighborhoods, NEN, Northeast Neighbors, and the Grant neighborhood. It's about 4,500 households. They've already received a survey that's a travel survey, basically finding out how they got around the previous week. And then we take that data, all of that information gets entered into our database. All those folks then get a secondary mailer that says, what information would you like? Do you want to know about moving forward? Do you want to know about current bus service? Would you like to know about carpooling or van pooling, walking, cycling? We'll have a number of events that will happen. The folks in these neighborhoods are going to get 3 newsletters with information about events that are coming up. We'll be at the farmers market. We're going to do a tour of homes that have those little boxes in front of their house where people put books that they want to give away. There's actually quite a few of them in those neighborhoods. So we're going to do a walking tour to the little books, the little book places at people's houses. We're going to do a ride out to the farmers market, take a couple different trips like that. All the delivery information will go out through a temporary employee that hopefully we've hired. And that person will be on board hopefully next week, and they'll be putting the information that the people in the neighborhoods have requested into tote bags, and I'll say he, she right now, will be delivering those by bicycle to each of the individual people's homes, depending on what they asked for. And that concludes my third quarter report.
Questions?
Looks pretty good in the rideshare business.
I'm sorry?
Over time, this rideshare business is starting to pay off. Huh?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, finance report.
Thank you. Jared Isaacson, Finance Manager, will present the report.
Good evening, President Thompson and members of the board. I'm here this evening to present the third quarter financial report. Our first slide this evening, we're looking at the general fund, personal services, and materials and services. Both of these areas are under the 3/4 of the budget for 3/4 of the year thus far. A few items of note in the general fund. The insurance benefits are up due to higher than projected medical reimbursement expenses. Another item is that the liability and property insurance expenses are higher than anticipated due to the addition of cyber liability insurance that was not budgeted for. As we look at the special transportation fund, you'll notice that the materials and services for the 3 quarters ended is exceeding 75% of the annual budget. And this is mainly due to an excess of expense associated with an increase of about 44% of demand of service for the non-emergency medical transportation, or the DMAP program. This has also caused a significant increase in demand for the TripLink call center. As such, the call center has increased the number of service hours, expanding our Saturday service, as well as increased the number of staff to run the call center. As we, with this increase in demand, staff will be presenting a budget amendment to the board for adoption at the June 25th board meeting, so that we can get the appropriation increased so that we can ensure to spend the money as approved by the board. As we look at the capital project fund, we are well under budget for the 3/4 of the year.
Say so.
One item of note is the non-revenue vehicles has exceeded the annual budget for the project for this year due to some expenses associated with a new shop truck being outfitted, carried forward from the prior year. Any questions?
Seeing none, thank you, Jared.
Oh, Marcia has a question.
Marcia does.
On the annual budget, and then the third quarter actual, I had a conversation with Ellen about bus shelters. So is that reflected in here, that it's in the budget, but we haven't been invoiced and paid for them?
That's correct.
Thanks, Jared.
Thank you.
Board subcommittee reports. We've had no COG meeting this month. Special Transportation Fund Advisory Committee, we had one general meeting and one in North Marion. Do you want to report on either one of those, John?
The one in North Marion, which was just yesterday or the day before, I'll mention. The number of service providers was down, I felt. That we had the fellow from the Silver Trolley there, but we didn't have anyone from Woodburn Transit or from MV. The MV rep may possibly have been dealing with call center issues.
Hope so.
Dave.
Okay, Mid-Valley Commission on Transportation. Marcia?
Okay. We met Thursday, May 7th, and had a discussion on what's called the 150% fix-it list. And these are projects that need activity, not new builds, but things that can help, and putting together a list in the region of 150% more than what we expect for funding for those projects, and how it might interact with other projects. We had just a discussion on the State Transportation Improvement Program, which is about every 3 years. The STIP is updated. There is concern because of the federal funding issues about what's going to happen with the STIP, and so it's getting to be a little bit later on what on when those meetings will happen. So it may be a busy fall. We enjoy always Shane Otteson, who comes and gives us an idea about in our area what projects have been done in construction. He's always lovely. He finds things old and new, and so this time he had an old photo of road building equipment back into the 20s and showing the things that would never pass workers' comp nowadays. But it's always interesting to see what actually has been done. And it included quite a few things, quite a long discussion about the projects and how they're going along for the Newburgh-Dundee bypass, which is in our region. And it's under construction, and it will be taking more time. It's a very big project. It was the first project the Area Commission on Transportation started talking about in 1996. It started construction last year, so things move slowly sometimes when you have to put together big pots of money. And then we talked also about the air quality conformity determination that is required in order to make sure that our air quality is up to date. We shared some general information, and that was about it.
Okay, Bob, Salem-Keizer Area Transportation Study Policy Committee.
Okay. Marcia attended the first, we had 2 meetings between the last 2.
Since the last board meeting, we've had 2 meetings.
Do you
So I went to the April meeting because Bob attended a meeting for me in March. And so at that meeting, we had some modifications of the Transportation Improvement Program, which is the local program, that needed to be done to make it consistent. It was an important meeting for Salem-Keizer to be there because some of the other things were changing. That there were 2 tip adjustments. There were 3 tip adjustments, which is the Transportation Improvement Plan, as I said before. One did not affect us, but one adjustment was to put in money for the Chariots bus CNG tank replacements, and the other adjustment to the Transportation Improvement Program was to allow for providing $350,000 for the Connect Oregon match of our $1 million grant from ODOT. So it was an important meeting to have somebody with a blue shirt on. And we did an administrative modification, made some decisions, and one of the modifications is to try to do a deck overlay on the Center Street Bridge so that it might go forward faster.
Well, so we had our meeting on Tuesday, the May meeting, and action item, one of the major action items was that we approved the Regional Transportation System Plan and the Air Quality Confirmation Determination, which are for the period of 2015 through 2035. And that was one of the major things. And we also have this, I'm talking acronyms, but I'm using real terms here so people can understand. We have a federal aid urban boundary, which they call a FOB, and we were looking at various pieces of property around the urban growth area. This is an area that receives a federal designation and then it is eligible for certain types of federal funding. And most of the areas were adopted, but there were a couple areas, one in Polk County and one up in Keizer. They wanted to put Keizer Rapids Park in there, and because there's very few roads in Keizer Rapids Park, Keizer opted out, and there was another piece of property that along Highway 22 out in Polk County that was not put in, but the rest of the areas were adopted. So this allows certain areas to receive federal funds. Then we also had a very good rideshare presentation that you just saw from Roxanne. And we also had continued discussion, which is going to go on for a long time, about greenhouse gases and the Land Conservation and Development Commission's rulings on greenhouse gas targeting and scenario planning to determine how our plans are going to allow us to reach these goals within by 2040 or 2050. And that's about all. And I might announce that the next OMPOC meeting is July 24th in Bend. And then you don't have to ask me about that one.
Okay. No river crossing either, I take it.
No river crossing.
And Steve's gone. Anybody go to the Citizens Advisory Committee? Or was there one?
I wasn't unable to make it.
There was one.
What happened?
We presented to that group an outline of the upcoming actions, and I'm gonna have to go to my notes.
The actions we took tonight, I take it.
Yes. Do you have? I'll have it in my packet.
Yeah.
The minutes.
You have it, John?
I saw the
It's there
minutes.
someplace.
Let's see if I can find them.
Page 244.
Thank you.
244 in yours here.
I don't have that
That's
packet.
the
Oh,
agenda.
packet. I ended at 222. I'll continue on, and I'll report on my general manager at the same time.
Okay. 242. There you go.
There we go. Yeah.
Actually, yeah, this was in April. I presented a moving forward update, as well as South Salem Transit Center update. We talked about the board elections and the upcoming budget. What we also talked about, we just had a meeting, that's the one I'm talking about. We presented, the big issue was the composition of the CAC. There is several who are terming out, and so we're planning on how to project replacements as well as a new chair. We also set out plans for action items. In July, it was going to be moving forward phase 2, as well as we have a annual paratransit plan update that they'll be presented to provide a recommendation to you that you'll be approving in September. I think that was it.
Okay. Okay. I guess we're down to your general manager, so you can just keep going.
Well, that I am ready for. So the next several days are pretty active for the district. Saturday is our annual awards recognition banquet. Several of you are able to attend. It should be a great evening at the Northwest Wine Study Center. It's supposed to be great weather, and we have the reception on the patio, so should be a good evening. Monday, two big events. One, you heard earlier, the electronic day passes go into effect for the fixed route service, and we also begin the West Salem Connector pilot project on Monday with the flexible demand service. So big day for us. And then next week, I'll be out of the office on transit business all week. But I will provide my report tomorrow.
Okay, and Alan and I met with Britta France regarding local artistic effort to brighten up some of our shelters. And I'm not sure exactly where that's going, but we'll wait and see. They have a plan to get volunteer artists to do some artistic things to some of the shelters that we have, make them look nicer, I guess. Attended a chamber forum, which this time was an annual meeting, which congratulated those that have been active over the year and recognized a number of the members for their service. Chamber Policy Committee, we dealt with both sides of the food cart business in Salem, and that was really interesting and a very long meeting, actually. Usually they're right on time at the hour and a half, but this one went on for quite a while afterwards. Attended 3 budget meetings and Iris Festival lunch, and we received an award for sponsorship. And went to the reception for the governor that was put on by the Chamber and ZedCorp. And we attended a couple of special transportation meetings. So why don't we start with John?
Okay. As already identified, we had the board work session and board meeting last month. The meeting with the reception for the governor, I thought that was pretty interesting. Neighborhood association meetings, North Lancaster. A couple of the special transportation fund meetings, one STF and one CARTS meeting, and I guess we're going to have our big combined meeting right at the beginning of next month and just next week. In fact, that'll be a big event for special transportation fund. And we're running late, so that can be enough for tonight.
Hey, Brad.
Yeah, so I attended the work session and the budget committee meetings.
Great.
And also wanted to congratulate Colleen Bush for winning the election to be able to take my position. And so yeah, one more work session, one more general board meeting, and then it'll be all Colleen's. So congratulations.
Thank you. Kate.
Okay, so as a short timer, I did attend as many meetings. Yeah, also, I attended as many meetings as possible this month. So I wanted to also acknowledge Kathy Lincoln for being here this evening and all the work she's going to be busy doing. So I'm assuming she's freed up one commitment to make a commitment to this board, or she wouldn't be here tonight. So acknowledge the board that lost her. And with that being said, I spend a lot of my time matching people to transit as always, so it's just interesting listening to rideshare and the other services that I'm emailing out to clients or we're planning for, even job interviews to get out to Spirit Mountain. Good stuff. And I was explaining that I'm planning a vacation in Escondido, and my options were to take the super shuttle for $110 round trip, or the really great transit that runs on Saturday for less than $10 each way. So it looks like I'm going to be taking the transit.
Well, I was on vacation for a couple weeks, and so traveled by Amtrak to the Southwest and had a chance to ride some transit systems in Los Angeles. Rode the Gold Line and rode the New Mexico Rail Runner, and down in Phoenix rode their light rail system, and also the SunTrans streetcar system in Tucson. So had a little transit time as well as some R&R. Some of my activities this month, I attended the Morningside and the Semka Neighborhood Association meetings. I attended the governor's reception and also attended the Showbiz exhibit at the convention center. Worked on several committee meetings like our budget committee and so forth. I attended last Saturday the Association of Oregon Rail and Transit Advocates in Portland and represented the board at the last SCATS meeting on Tuesday.
So, like everyone else, it's been a busy month. May is always a busy month because we have the work session, we had a budget orientation and 2 budget meetings. I made part of the budget orientation meeting. I went to 3 neighborhood association meetings, and I'm going back to one of them on Monday because it's their annual meeting. I'm just hoping I haven't seen an agenda, but I don't know what else they're going to have on the agenda. I did this, since our last board meeting, I did the SCATS meeting for Bob and did the area commission meeting. That's my assignment. I attended the pedestrian bridge grand opening where they were honoring Senator Courtney because of his long-term commitment to that sort of an idea, which is where I guess the naming of it came from because he'd been involved 40 years ago when he was on city council. Did another small committee meeting and met with Britta France and Lorraine Dye on Monday on the paint project and verified some things that are going. So you're going to be hearing some announcements. We got some things clarified. They want to support transit by recruiting artists, and Lorraine is within the arts community quite well known, and she does some really lovely work. To just spruce up some of the bus shelters that are not going to be replaced or not going to be taken away, and so they're going to be calling for some of their architect and artist friends to do something that's appropriate for the shelter so people can sort of still see through. So I had an hour meeting with them and then met with Alan and we clarified it, so I think it's going to be a go. They don't want to have to take a lot of staff time for us, so that they want to make sure that they're the ones who are sort of spearheading it as transit supporters to liven up our system. So I think, oh, and I went to the reception the Chamber of Commerce had for the governor's reception. So I guess that's the month.
Okay, anybody have anything else for the good of the order? Our newbies that want to make any comments? Our almost newbies? Okay.
We could reassure them that it doesn't usually run this late.
Yeah, it doesn't usually run this late. Okay. Okay, I guess we're done here. Meeting adjourned.
I'll give this.
Thanks, Kate.
Is that